Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Current Situation, another great episode. This is actually a recurring guest, Patricia Cardona. She actually teaches parents to prevent child sexual abuse. And I believe this is a coined title. She's known as the steward of children. She does have a story of her own, and she has broken her silence publicly in, I believe it was a poetry event in 2019, April of 2019. I guess that'd be about 5 years ago in a poetry event. And since then, she really understands the value of telling her story and creating a safe place and space to talk about trauma and overcoming sexual abuse, child sex abuse. So without further ado, we will talk further. Patricia, actually, she just put out a book and it will be translated into English as well. We're going to talk about that later as well. So without further ado, welcome, Patricia. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Lily. I'm really happy to be back in Beyond the Current Situation. I love the title, by the way.
Thank you so much. And what better guest than you to really talk about how you've gone beyond your current situation and you've been doing it so beautifully. So since last you were on, which I believe was a year ago, what new has been going on for you since then with your mission and everything you've been doing?
Since last year, I think the biggest step I have taken is to move back to Mallorca, where I am from, quit my job as a project manager in the telecoms world, and fully dedicate my life to my mission, right, which is ending with child sexual abuse. And that has, a lot of branches that you have to work on to end with child sexual abuse.
Oh, wonderful. Congratulations, Mazel Tov, all of the sayings that go behind that. It's really exciting to hear you take that leap from, that day job to really focusing 100% on what it is that you want to do, your purpose, your mission. We were just talking about this, myself and another guest yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I was saying is that really you have to be fully in the game if you want to really make the impact that you're looking to make on change, right? And so this is really, it sounds like you're really on your journey on the way to a full-time gig in eradicating child sex abuse.
That's was just, I mean, it takes really a lot of courage to take that leap, because it's the courage that you need. Like, okay, I do believe in myself. I do believe I can make a change in the world. I do believe I can be persistent, and that it takes a lot of courage. And just I was listening to Brian Tracy in the car while I was driving here, and he was like talking about how much courage you need, and the different types of courages that you need to really make a change and to make it last. And it was resonating with me so much. If you don't commit, it's impossible that you make a change.
Yes, I totally agree. I align with that. It's like that full commitment. And what is that? What do you think stops you? And you can't speak for anyone else, but for yourself, what do you think stops you from being more courageous?
Self-doubt.
Hmm. Yeah.
Self-doubt. What if I fail? What if I fail? What happens if I fail? um you fear. I have like a double fear. One is like, what if I fail? What if I become successful? How will I handle the success? Because you hear so many stories of people becoming successful and having to leave people they love behind because they they don't go with you. And that's something quite scary. to hear.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Very scary. I've been going to some of my friends like, will you still love me if I become really successful?
Yeah. It reminds me of that song, Will You Still Love Me Forever? Hey, Patricia, what is failure to you?
I think I've been redefining failure for some time. I think failure is not even trying.
Yes.
Failure is giving up.
Mm, yeah,
Not,
no doubt.
no doubt.
And what is success for you?
Success, also redefining the word success in the last couple of years. Success is believing in yourself.
Mm,
Success is believing you can do what you put what you're aiming. So I think that's a big success. Taking a small step or big step, like taking the steps every day, is success. Not necessarily the day I got the book out, but every day that I woke up, I was sitting, I was writing. The day I could not write because it was overwhelming, but I still decided to go on and push through. That's success.
yeah. Yeah, I totally relate as an author.
Yes.
There's those days, actually, I was fully committed to my book. I just let everything go as far as the outside world. I didn't socialize. I didn't go anywhere. I literally would sit 8 to 10 hours a day. The only thing I got up to do was to walk my dog. And it's a good thing because, you need to move when you're sitting there all day. But
Yeah.
it's interesting because um, I don't know if you ever heard this saying, failing is falling forward. And I contemplated that at some point, and I really like that so that you feel as if, okay, so this didn't work out as you expected it, but
Mhm.
in the large picture, in the large scheme of things, it really worked out exactly as it's supposed to be. Does that make sense for you?
It does make sense for me. I think my success will only come. I compare it to when you have to face your trauma. Like one door opens and it's okay, I'm gonna fix this, and then oh, there's something left. I'm gonna fix that. But only when you're ready, the door opens. And I think for me, success is happening in the same way.
Yeah.
That in the way that I can only get to where I am mentally ready to get to. I wrote a book almost 4 years ago that is not out. And still today, I'm not ready to get that book out because of the things I'm telling.
Oh, is it related to the same to your story?
Is related to my story, is going deeper into the story, telling some of the details
Mhm.
of the story, some of the details of abuse, and is it was really healing to write it.
Yes.
But still, I am not ready to put it out.
Right. I do recall that you and I had a conversation off camera, um, that you had written a book. And I believe I recall you saying that it was in a different state of mind where you were still kind of angry and you were
Yeah.
concerned that maybe this anger was showing on your mom and you weren't sure if
Yeah.
that was really how you wanted to present your book. Is that correct? Do I remember that?
Yes, that's
Great.
correct.
And
There
then,
was
yeah, and then fast forward, when we did go on camera, you told me very organically while we were live on this show, I didn't know. You said, I just contacted my mother, or my mother just contacted me. And it was like this this big news on beyond the current situation.
yeah.
So, do you feel that because you've rekindled and have really come to terms with your relationship and gone beyond that situation together, that that now you can go back and maybe edit and change the essence of the original book?
I I'm looking forward to revisit the book. And then I think there are parts that I will just erase from the book,
Mhm.
because I don't think they are needed. I don't think they add anything to the story.
Like
It
the
was
judgments?
Yes, it was
Mhm.
judgments and
Yeah.
justification. This is why I'm so angry, you know.
Yes.
By
Yes.
definition of the UNICEF convention, I'm entitled to be mad.
Yes.
It was not written like that, but this is when I look back, I was justified. I felt the need to justify with studies that that was sexual abuse. That's not something any child should go through. And I was entitled to be mad. But now, um, I don't need to write that down at this moment. And in the current book, in the one that is came just out this month, um, I'm doing it from a completely different perspective, right?
Yeah.
Even my mom started reading it, and she told me, "I think you're very generous with the people who hurt you,
Mm.
because I understand that the majority of people who hurt me with the words, they were not even aware of what they were saying. It came because curiosity, simply like ignorance on about the topic, because we don't talk about it, so we don't know how to talk to survivors, or just unawareness."
Correct. Yeah. I wanna back up for a moment. There's a few things you said that I'd like to unpack a little bit. One of the things that I'm curious, and I think that our listeners would be curious to know, is your mother for those of you, by the way, that don't know Patricia's story, go back earlier. I believe it's maybe the season prior to this, or maybe 2 seasons, and listen to the episode with Patricia Cardona on child sex abuse. It will stop you in your tracks, and it will bring you awareness that you never knew before. That I can't even know words. It was one of the most powerful, impactful, critically important episode I've ever done since the first day of Beyond the Current Situation. Now, as far as this moment and this episode, uh, Patricia's mom was someone that was involved in her story, and so I want to ask you, Patricia, and she wasn't the abuser, by the way, let's just put that out there. But I wanna ask you, Patricia, does your mom feel that is she including herself in your generosity toward forgiveness and people that hurt you?
Yes,
Great.
absolutely. Yes. I
Okay,
have
great.
even dedicated the book to my mom,
That's beautiful.
and I have thanked her for giving me life, right?
Yeah,
It's something that in the past I wouldn't have even thought about it. I would blame her for
yeah.
so many things that she didn't give me.
Mm,
And now I think she gave me everything I needed, right? And what I needed the most is to be alive, to be here, and she could not give me more
yes,
because she had her own limitations, and I understand it now, not before,
yes. I
not
love
even a
that.
year ago, right?
Mhm. Yes, correct. I mean, given because we spoke about a year ago and you were just coming into that light, which was it really very, to me, impressive in a heartful way. Because you have a special light about you that it really, truly, I mean this, you have very clear eyes today. I can see your eyes clear. And what I mean by that, I say that a lot, is there's a peace in your eyes.
Oh, thank you. I do feel much more at peace. I came back to Mallorca and I met my mom once and we had a conversation. And now I'm in contact with her via messaging, but I haven't seen her again. But I know she's there, and I mean, we didn't see each other for 6 years. That
Mhm.
says something, right, about the relationship. And as you know, the relationship with the mom is the most important relationship we have.
Yes.
And having her approval for what I do, for the book I wrote, it does help me a lot, right? Like I feel like validated by the most important person in my life.
Yeah. So important. You know,
And
i- in this topic and many more topics that surround abuse, because there's so many legs, right, to abuse, between child sex abuse and violence, domestic violence
yeah,
abuse, and um, uh, all kinds of abuse. There's It's funny because you said something about there's nothing more important than a child's relationship with their mom. I recently, well, not recently, I think it was about 2 years ago, was having a chat by text with a professional, and and he's a news anchor, and he he and I align in that the mom, the mother is really the most invested in a child. And so it's really suggested that the mother be guided and trained, if you will, and taught how to actually rear up a child. What's your feelings on that?
uh, I'm not sure if I quite grasp the question.
Yeah. So when we talk about needing to change the world, in that changing how children are raised, so they're raised in a proper environment so that they don't grow up with adverse events like child sex abuse happening, or domestic violence, or going into drugs, alcohol, like whatever that may be, any kind of adversity. I honestly feel that a mother is the most invested in a child. So if we can teach and train mothers in all of these areas, children will grow up with a happier life.
Yes, yes. I do I do fully agree with that. And moms are so busy, right? They are working, taking care of the family, the house, and all the doctor's appointments and any activities that children do. So there's a lot of weight on them.
Mhm.
And nowadays there's a lot of different kinds of trainings on Montessori education, positive education for children. And I think this can facilitate a lot. And to my experience with the training I'm giving to parents, somehow it does heal a little bit of their inner child as well.
Yeah, for you.
For me, but for the parents, for the people who come,
Oh, how
because
wonderful. How
they
wonderful.
because what happens is that they need to have conversations with the family, including their mom. So they are having conversations with their moms that they didn't have before. because I want to raise my child in this way, and I want to bring this education on child sexual abuse prevention, which is, asking for consent, teaching, the body parts and everything we talk about in the last episode. But it does this work, any kind of work that you do as a mom, for what I hear from the moms, because I am not a mom myself, it does help them to to understand better their own parents, and somehow reframe how they were raised, and being able to have conversations they didn't have before. Therefore, they can also change the way they relate to their own children without having resentment towards their own parents. Because if you live with resentment towards your parents, you are denying a really big part of yourself. And this will pass through the next generation, because they will feel it. Your children will
Absolutely.
feel how you feel towards your
Absolutely.
mom, towards your dad, and it
Hmm.
will stay there. But if you're able to clear that out, and you will build trust, which is the core of my program, is to build trust. So the first thing the child thinks when they do something wrong is not my mom is gonna kill me or my dad is gonna kill me, but I gotta tell my mom I made a mistake. Something was wrong. You know, and
Right.
and they
Something didn't
believe.
feel right. And so instead of being afraid or embarrassed or
Mm,
um, uh, um, just worrying in general, oh, I don't even know. Did I do something wrong? Or,
mm,
they should be able to feel like they can, no matter what they're feeling or thinking, go to mom and tell her what's going on.
correct. Yes, and that's a habit that you need to train, but it's trained beautifully just by spending more time with your children and have more deep and meaningful conversations.
Yeah, you think? I mean, it's cultivating a relationship with your child and
Yes.
and learning how to do that by example with your mom.
Yes.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I'd like to, although you never became a mom, you're a perfect person to teach this because you're a child and now you've reestablished this relationship with your mom now after that situation, and you can see you've proven how this is very, very healing from the inside out for both mom and for you, and really transforming your entire heart and mind, and you're able to really educate others with this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for appreciating that. It is true that some people reject their moms, because we all have a special relationship with moms. And some people do reject their moms and don't come back to them. And and the link that is broken or damaged. And some people are submissive to their moms, and they do everything the mom wants and how they want it, because they don't want to disappoint their mom. And some people are challenging them, and they're constant, like, in there's like they're rivals in some way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's right, who's right. And not everybody, of course, but many people do. And you always want to please your mom.
Mm-hmm.
You always want your mom to feel good and to tell you good things about you, your mom to be proud of you. Doesn't matter how old you are. You're like, mom, right?
Yeah.
Do you approve it? Probably when you get married, you want your mom to approve who you're marrying with. And it doesn't mean that if she doesn't approve, you will not get married to that person. But it does help when you're backed up and supported by your mom. So being
Mm-hmm.
able to have those conversations and allowing her to be in her role, not taking the role of a friend, or not taking the role of a child sometimes, because we take care of them so much. that the roles are inverted and
Or reverse, exactly.
reverse. Yes, and it's difficult to. It's really important to identify what's the role, and then if it's not mom daughter, if it's something else, then you need to change so that the relationship changes. I think my mom has changed a lot based on what I have changed.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
went to therapy wanting her to go to therapy, right?
Yeah,
I wanted her to change this. I wanted her to change that, and but it didn't work because the only person, as you know very well, we can change is ourselves and how we
exactly.
relate and how we respond.
Exactly. I want to pause you for a minute because you said a lot of things in there. Let's go back to the link being broken. And and remind me for a moment, dad wasn't in the picture, correct? Just you were raised with a single mom?
Yes, I was raised with by my mom. My dad wasn't in the picture. No.
Okay. So now when there's a link broken between a daughter and her mom, there's different things that happen when it's incoming as a coach and a parent. When there's a mom and a dad involved, and then when there's just a mom involved, and then when there's a broken family, breaking of the family unit, like divorce, now there's a mom part-time, and then there's a dad part-time. So there's so many legs to this. Honestly, Patricia and I could probably talk for hours on this. We'll have to have a whole nother episode. So right now, let's just break down something interesting that you said, Patricia, about that link being broken and looking to mom for approval all the time. What I found is there's vast differences between a single parent with a daughter, a mom, single mom with a daughter, and then there's also a vast difference between that and a parent, a child, a daughter with a mother and a father, where many times there's a link that's broken between mom and the daughter, and they look to the dad for approval because and I look, this is a whole nother episode again, but many times you see the girl lashing back at the mom, disrespecting the mom, and the dad treats the daughter like she can do no wrong, and they go to daddy, and that's really very, very common, and they look for they like their quote unquote daddy's little girl. But there's a very, very, and I'm going to have Patricia answer this and kick in on this. There's a big difference between how the daughter relates with the father and how the daughter relates with the mother, and how the mother still needs to be keenly aware if there's something going on with child sex abuse with the father or an uncle or a friend that comes into the home. Can you speak to that, Patricia?
Yes. Um, yes, when you have it, so it was, I can speak to that because it was my case, right? So I was raised by her. My dad was not in the picture. I cannot get validation from anywhere else. We had, especially since my teenage years, a lot of confrontation between my mom and I, and especially after the abuses happened by two friends of her. In one occasion was a woman, and in one occasion it was a man. And she knew, and I told her, but still she decided uh, not to take me to any therapy or to talk about it. She asked me to shut down and shut up. And I was,
She basically asked you to deny it.
yeah, and I was in denial for 30 years. But of course, it's not like this in every situation. And you know what is that we expect a lot from moms, and I have witnessed this with my friends when they're raising their kids. I remember during the pandemic, uh, my friend's son was trying to do some homework online, and it was not working, and it was not because the computer or the program was not working, and he was blaming his mom for his mom not being able to fix the computer because he expects mom to solve everything and to know everything. And he was so frustrated. Eventually, she gave, as moms do, she found another solution. She wrote it on a paper and she took a picture and she sent the picture to the teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the expectations that the moms can do anything and everything is a bit too much. But this is what we expect as children because they gave us life. What else, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and as a mom, as a single mom, uh, it's hard because you have to do everything by yourself, and it's really important that these moms take a lot of. We talk a lot about self-care,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it sounds like empty, but truly taking time for themselves, schedule it in your calendar, to have moments to decompress, to be with friends if you can, and try to be as emotionally stable as you can. Because
Yeah.
if you're a mom who's not emotionally stable, it's really hard for your children to tell you anything. Because the last thing a child wants to do is to disturb their mom. They don't want her to be sad, they don't want her to be angry or frustrated. They want their mom to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
The children feel responsible, especially when the dad is gone. They feel responsible to keep their parents happy, and uh, so it's really important to have that emotional stability, and also having the conversations about prevention and training, preparing the environment, all the adults in the environment to know about how to prevent child
Yeah.
sexual abuse. So it's not only you looking for your child and
Mm-hmm.
looking after your child, but
Mm-hmm.
also other adults
Yeah.
environment.
I love that, Patricia. It reminds me of a story that I remember from when I was young growing up. I was, I guess, a preteen, tween, and my sister is about 4 years older than I, and she was already a teenager. And I remember my father had a good friend, and he would come over often in a social way, him and his wife, or sometimes we would go to their house and we were just, we were friends and they were friends. And so we were just the children. And I remember one day asking my mom, his name was Adam. And um, I said, Mom, whatever happened to, I still remember his last name. I'm not going to say it because we're on we're on this global podcast. But whatever happened to Adam? Blah blah blah. Adam Smith. And I'm just making up a name. And she said, "Nothing. Why?" And I said, "Well, because he hasn't been around. Like I haven't seen him." And she said, "Well, the last time he was here, he made a comment. Oh, your girls are growing up so beautiful. And your dad cut him off. He never wanted him near you kids again." Now, that may seem extreme. However, I get it. You know?
Yeah, as you say, it might seem extreme. That's the way your father dealt with it, and we don't know this Adam if
Right,
he.
right. I mean, it was probably completely innocent.
Yes.
However, for those days, that was very extreme. You could call it overprotective if you want, and or jealousy or whatever. I'm going to say overprotective, but better to be overprotective than not have at least one antenna up when someone speaks in a specific way. And also, I imagine we should really teach, you probably already do. You can tell us and teach us as adults, responsible adults, really how to speak when it comes to speaking about or towards someone's child, correct?
Yes, we have to do it. If we, I mean, silence is what keeps perpetrators doing what they do. And
Yes.
if we are silent about it, if we don't talk about it, it's going to keep happening. But
Hmm.
the more we talk about it, they will do less, especially the ones we have in our environment, because we have to be real. There's about 10-20% of the population, for what I read recently, that are pedophiles.
Yeah,
That's a lot. And where there's children, there are pedophiles. We can't deny it.
right.
So some of them will go as far as getting a degree in medicine, just to have easy access to children. Not the
Oh my
majority.
goodness. That makes my stomach turn, but you're right.
Yeah. And so when you go to the doctor, for instance, never leave your child alone with the doctor. Never allow them to go behind the curtain alone. Be there. Be present. Make sure that they are not, removing the panties when they don't have to do that. Maybe they want just to check the belly, but they don't need to remove anything.
Correct.
And
Wow.
things like that. So as a parent, you really need to be present and be aware of what's going on. And many of the abuses happen before our eyes. Adam said what he said, and maybe that was innocent, but one way that could have been dealt with is like, in this house we do not appreciate to make comments about our girl's appearance, because we are this is not the most relevant to the personality. We don't allow this kind of comments in the house. So
That's
if you come to this
perfect.
house, if you just come to this house, you know, keep your distance and
Yes.
keep your distance and treat them with a lot of respect.
In-
That
Interesting.
that could be one approach. But he decided, like, I'm not taking any chances here. He's going to be out.
Yeah. Interesting. And you said something really interesting about doctors. The other thing is, talk about being right underneath your nose. I would argue that anyone that has a child, a little girl or a little boy, I literally wouldn't allow my child alone in a room for any extended amount of time um, without me, like just steps away. What are your feelings on that?
I truly agree, especially when they are little, right? You need to be there when they are not verbal. You need to be there for any kind of connection with the one-to-one situations is where abuse happens, and
Yeah.
it can happen with an older child, or it can happen with an adult. So one-to-one situations have to be avoided. And if the
Yes.
children come to play in your house, you should have the doors open. You should have
Yes.
the policies, like open door policies. Mom can come here anytime.
Yes, perfect. And the other thing is, and I know we elaborated on this a lot in our first episode together. So again, I'm really encouraging all the listeners to go back to that episode on child sex abuse with Patricia Cardona and listen to that episode in its entirety and listen to it repeatedly so that things really set in, take notes. It's such an impactful episode. But as far as right now, the other thing I want to mention, which it, look, this is going to be disturbing for a lot of parents because yes, we need childcare. We need, because if we're working outside of the home or inside the home, we need to feel a sense of trust. However, we need to be educated. And what I mean by that is if you need to have a quote unquote babysitter, maybe you're going out to dinner or you have date night or whatever that is, I would put to you that you might want to consider, and this is just me, you might want to consider the babysitter concept because there's so many stories about babysitters that abuse, that sexually um, become predators on young children,
Mhm.
like teenage, like tweens, like preteens, where you have someone that's older, an older babysitter female that is going after a younger male who's maybe 10, 11 years old or 8 or 9, and vice versa, an older male going after younger female. And now we have the whole look, the reality is that then we have the whole trans movement. We have homosexuality is something open that people speak openly about and have come out, and fine, but watch who you leave your children with.
Yes, I think you need to have a checklist before hiring a babysitter.
What can you tell listeners what that checklist looks like?
Well, you have to know if that person is been trained previously in child sexual abuse prevention.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
you need to know that if they have followed a training. There are free trainings that you can do in so many nonprofits, right?
Mm.
You need to have a background check. Not
Okay,
only
so they need to be trained, maybe even certified in child sex abuse prevention. You
Yes,
need to have a background check.
you need to have a background check, and you must call phone numbers to check. I mean, give me, give me houses where you've been working, if they go through an agency, have a conversation around child sexual abuse with them and so many other things. And be clear about the rules that you have in your house. Is tough. You don't because we are not used to have these conversations. And like, we are not keeping secrets here in this house. My child is going to tell me everything. Secrets are not welcome. And have the rules very clear. He can see one episode of this, no internet, exactly what they can do and what they cannot do, and report
Perfect.
to you at
And
the end.
that's so perfect. And what about, I hate to say this, but hidden cameras in the house?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
be in favor.
They don't,
this
and you know what?
I,
They don't cost
I
that
have heard
much.
I have heard so many stories. I will
Yeah.
be all in for cameras in the house to
Hmm.
keep an eye on the babysit. And you can tell them, I have cameras in the house, so I can see what's happening anytime from my phone.
Fantastic. And
So you
if,
don't have to hide it, in the same way when you have an alarm in your house and you put a sign out there, so
yeah,
everybody knows there's an alarm. So they should,
prevention 101, prevention. Tell
yes,
them, tell them I'm watching you.
I'm watching you. I have cameras, I have microphones. I can hear and watch anything that's happening in the house at any time.
Fantastic. That's amazing. And I love how you talk about how you were saying also to have very specific rules and no internet. Could you give us just touch upon this? Because again, this is a whole other episode. Can you touch upon predators that come via the internet to children and teenagers?
Yeah, this is, as you say, at least 5 episodes.
Yes, which
But
I think we should do like a series because it's really big now.
yeah, so there's a lot of predators on the internet, and not all of them are old, creepy men. Many of them are younger boys, maybe 20, in their 20s
Mm.
even. And of course, they pretend to be someone else or someone prettier and interesting, and they groom the child. And especially they groom children. If people don't know what grooming is to persuade and talk to them about, like, oh, how beautiful you are. I find you really interesting. And they might, because they know who they're following. Imagine you love, I don't know, dolphins. Like, oh, I love dolphins too. I'm a dolphin rescuer, whatever, right? And they will connect with the child with the things they like. So they will build that connection. So I really encourage parents to have the connection with their children through what they like, right? If they like basketball, basketball. If they like literature, literature. If they like, I don't know, whatever, marbles, then marbles, whatever it is, like, connect with your child through that. So they don't need to find that connection with someone else,
Right.
right? And then they will be asking for pictures, and some of the pictures might begin like innocently, like, okay, stick your tongue out, and the kids will find it funny.
Yeah,
But
so true.
they will find it funny. They will stick their tongue out, open your mouth, stick your tongue out. And but these pictures, they can use them for their businesses, right?
Yeah.
And actually can be an actual business. And and then they will keep going and going. And the images that are growing the most now on internet is they call self-generated category A. Self-generated is under extortion, right? And they might start saying, okay, put this pencil in your mouth or in your ear, and they will find it funny. Um, and then we'll ask them to put the pencil somewhere else.
Mm.
And they will be filming, taking pictures, and then we'll start extortion, and it could be
Sextortion.
extortion.
Oh,
Yes.
extortion. Well, I put sex in there because
No,
that would
no,
be a
but
good word.
yeah, no,
We
that was
could
correct.
coin that.
It
Yes,
is correct.
sextortion.
It is correct.
Yeah.
Sextortion. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe the the pedophile sends a picture of themselves naked. It could be
Right.
imagine I want to get pictures from a teenage boy, and I pretend to be a 18-year-old girl or 17-year-old girl or whatever, and I send pictures of myself, which is not myself, of a naked 14-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
and then say, now you send me a picture,
Mm-hmm.
and then the boy will send a picture, and then the extortion starts. And they will
Mm-hmm.
ask him for more and more and more, and
Yeah.
they can even ask, do you have a brother? Do
Right.
you have a little brother or little sister? Invite your brother or sister. Do you have a pet? Invite the pet. And and they
Good
will
point.
be and they will be um, in this, how do you call it? In this like spiral
They're
of
hooked. They're hooked.
they're hooked. They're hooked. And so it's really important to talk about all these things can happen. And if they happen to send a picture naked and they started being extorted, that the child is capable of going to the mom or the dad or teachers, like, look, I sent a naked picture to someone unknown, and now this person is threatening me.
Yeah.
They should be able to do that. So it's really important that the children are never, ever with their phone in the bathroom or in their bedroom at night, because this is where most of the material is created. It's self-generated, and it starts as soon as 7 years old.
Wow. Wow. Now, to add to that, by the way, everyone write that down and actually practice that. put that into your daily practice and knowledge. The other thing I want to say about all of that to listeners, I come from a place of really researching this very, very deeply for several years now. And what I found is that these very predators that you talk about are actually groomed previously from other predators. It's a cyclical pattern. So other predators that actually will take uh, these these people by pretending that, oh, someone responds to a job, employment in like another country.
Mm-hmm.
First, they groom them, then they think they're getting this job. They will go after specifically a person who they know has been looking for a job and is, in financial
Yeah.
hardship and comes from hardship in, a underprivileged family. And then they'll show up, they'll send them a ticket, they'll do everything to make it really feel real. They'll show up, whether it's a train or a plane, show up to this another city in which they're picked up and they're taken to a commune, if you will. They're put into a commune in a room with other victims, and they are trained to groom children via the internet. Or if they don't do it, they will be killed, and so will their whole entire family in the city that they came from.
Wow. This one I haven't heard of, but
Yes.
it
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me.
And
What?
it goes on. It I don't have the stats in front of me, Patricia, but this goes on uh, all the time. A lot of it in East Asia and India, and it's literally all forms of abuse in one. They'll take a brother, let's say, and then they force the brother to bring the little brother, the sibling, over. And so via internet, he'll say, hey, come, this job is great. There's opportunity for you too. Then they bring the brother, and before you know it, they have a, a commune of boys that are also trained to become sexual predators.
Where can I find this information?
I'm going to send you links and information after the show. If not right after the show, I'm going to send it to you this week via email, because I think that this is something that you can really add to your trainings.
Yeah, I am. It's
You're speechless, aren't you?
yeah. It's I've heard of so many things. This is just one more,
It's
right?
so sad.
I know that are men that go and adopt girls in Africa or Asia, but
Mhm.
they're not really adopting, right?
Right,
So on paper it
right,
is a daughter, but they are like just uh, legally kidnapping girls so they can abuse them and they keep them at home.
right. But could you imagine being excited about a job and okay, come to whatever, Bombay or whatever city, sending, we'll be there to pick you up on the other side. It's a great opportunity and all kinds of
Mm.
lies. And suddenly not being taken to any job except being taken to a commune and being trained and groomed to actually be a sexual predator.
Mm. In fact, Lily, there are manuals on the internet, on the dark web,
The dark
about
web.
how to um, groom children.
Goodness gracious.
And the manuals are 150 pages.
Wow.
And nowadays, these manuals are legal in most countries. And so now the European Union, since this February, has launched a new directive that has to be approved to make them illegal in Europe. But in the States, they are legal. In fact, in my book, I have published the index of one of these manuals because the nonprofit Child Rescue Coalition had published that on their website. Is really scary. And one of the things they say, the first thing you can do is to have your own child. So once you have your own child, you will have access to a lot of children.
Wow. Can you can you hold up your book? Do you have an image of the book or a physical
Yes,
book? Can you hold that up?
yes, that's the book. This is phrases that you should never say in front of a sexual abuse. These are 42 phrases that I and other survivors heard that should never be said, that are re-traumatizing and re-victimizing, and making us feel more guilty and dirty and lonely, right? But I also say what I would have liked to hear and why you should not say the first phrase to begin with. And then I have statistics, a guide on how to listen to survivors, a guide on how to prevent child sexual abuse, and some poetry as well to
Beautiful.
express all the feelings that I had. The, let's say, the darker feelings and also beautiful feelings that I had.
That's wonderful. This is such a I'm so happy you came out with this book. So dirty, guilty, lonely, alone. What would be 3 top phrases that you and other survivors, victims, and now survivors would say? 3 top phrases that make you feel dirty.
When they ask you details about the question, so, but what happened? How did it happen? You know?
Wow.
Yeah, when they ask you details about the abuse, they make you feel guilty, dirty, shamed, and it's like, and you, because it makes you feel like you wanted it somehow because they're very invasive questions. This
You
kind
know,
of
this
is really
blows
hard.
my mind because I do happen to recall that a lot of quote unquote doctors and psychologists and uh, um, even forensic doctors that they use in court cases and trials, they will bring a doll to a child and say, tell me how, how he or she touched you. Can you show me? Is that, is that also making a child feel dirty, guilty, ashamed?
For me, it would make me feel really, I think it's really disgusting.
I, I always felt this too, Patricia. I'm so glad that you're talking about this because this is what, honestly, this is what forensic doctors are doing. Oh,
I
let's prove child sex abuse and let's re-traumatize the child.
I think it's really disgusting. It's like uh, we are not treating children seriously, right? If a woman has been abused, she don't have. Do you have to show how someone has touched your breast or kissed you or touch your intimate body parts? You don't have to do it.
Wow,
It's,
this is
this
so
is really,
profound what you're saying right now.
we are not taking children seriously. I
We are
think.
not taking children seriously. If a child says that someone touched him or her and she's upset or he's upset, take it seriously and stop asking for details.
And I understand that when you go to court, they need to know because they, depending on the situation, the
Yes.
person will go to jail more or less years.
Right. How do you get around that? Also, like, even like for custody cases, how do you get around that, Patricia? How can you teach the justice system to get around that?
There is a model that is called Barna House, that the child only has to declare once. The declaration is recorded and is with everybody. Not everybody's in the room, right? But the different. I don't know the names of all the legal entities, but the lawyer, the judge, the uh, how is it called, the opposite of the lawyer, that is always in trials, the one that is defending.
Oh yeah, so the two attorneys, the one that's prosecuting and the one that's
Yeah.
defending.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, and the police, the psychologist, everybody is can watch that recording, and
Okay.
it's directed by someone who's specialized in talking with children.
Hmm.
And depending on the age, they can do it in one way or the other, right? Maybe they can have a conversation and have some drawings, and but it's like done with a lot of care, and only once. But as the child grows up, the sad truth is that they have to declare over and over, and sometimes the parents cannot be in the room.
Hmm. And that
And
is the sad truth. I'm getting angry about it. They do have to declare it over and over. It's just so sad.
and sometimes they are accused, because the child sexual abuse is so painful that some people don't want to admit, even judges or attorneys, you name it, or policemen or policewomen, they don't want to admit that they went through the same, that they were sexually abused. So if a girl says, my mom has touched my breast, or my dad has tickled me in the vulva, right?
Mhm.
And everything is done like as a joke, and they went through the same. They don't want to admit it happened to them. They don't want to admit and acknowledge, I went through sexual abuse as well. Or maybe it didn't impact them, but most of the times they have shut it down. And when they see it in the outside, they deny it. Like, it
Mhm.
wasn't that bad. It was only touching your breast. It was only tickling your vulva, or it was only a kiss.
And aren't they isn't that because they're conditioned or trained to to start to believe that it's normal?
They yeah, there's a trend that you want to normalize it. It's not like I want, that, like, some people want to normalize it, like it's not that bad. It wasn't a rape.
Right. I think a better word
It
is
was not.
to not make such like just make light of it. It's not as big as it's not as awful as you may think.
Yeah,
Wow.
precisely.
Which
Yes.
and obviously we know that not to be true. It's the complete opposite.
Yeah, and then when you deny that, uh something inside the child breaks.
Yeah.
In, and then all the self-doubt is everywhere, because you have been denied the most basic thing, which are your instincts. This didn't feel right. This is not good. And I was not protected by the adults in my environment.
Right.
So, and if you shut up, I think we talked about it before. If you shut up for this, you will shut up for many other things in your life. You
Yeah,
will
if you
shut up
shut
your
up for
emotions.
this, you will shut up for many other things in your life. Like, okay, let's explain that. What? Like emotions? What else?
Yeah, you will not talk about your emotions. In the future, when you have in a intimate relationship, you will put the other person's desires above yours, even if you don't want to do certain things. Uh, maybe it's not that bad that we do this today, even if I don't want to, because you know what, because your feelings, your desires do not count. Your wishes do not count. What
Ugh,
counts is someone else's opinion about your body and about your feelings.
yeah. And what should count for people listening right now that maybe feel that they were, adults. It's not like there's children listening to this, but let's say there are adults listening right now to this episode, and it starts to stir up something from when they were younger, and they're realizing, wow, I was really abused. I was taken advantage of, and maybe it was child sex abuse. What would you say to them right now to, uh, uh, in how to address that internally right now for them so that they can address it and heal?
So if something resonates with them of what I said, and they realize that this is something that's been in the back of their head, because some people remember this tickling in the vulva or in the testicles, or that happened 40 years ago or 30 years ago, but they don't remember anything else of that day. They remember that thing. It is for a reason. If you remember, it's for a reason. It's because it was a traumatic event. It was emotionally charged. So if it's emotionally charged, there's something that you need to do about it, because it was not emotionally charged in a good way. It's not like the day you get your bicycle and you're happy and you remember you got your bicycle. It was the day that you were touched by your auntie or your uncle or your uncle or your cousin or whatever.
Right.
You need to address that. You need to come to terms to that. Uh, Everybody has a different way of healing. For me, it's been really helpful to write it down. How
Okay,
I
write it
felt,
down as one way. Write it down.
for me, how I felt in that moment, how I feel now, and then, if you will, how I would like to feel. But, and I would speak with someone you trust about this. You need to feel that you're not alone in this.
Right, right. That's with
And
any abuse case. You're not alone.
you're not alone in it. And it could be that you tell to someone and they turn their cold shoulder on you, therefore 42 sentences.
Yes.
So
I love
find
that. The
someone.
42 sentences in the book,
Yeah.
which will be
So
coming out in English, which we will again announce that and do and have links and everything in the show notes. So just review. So before you move forward, the first one is write it down, how you felt when it happened, how you feel about it now, how you would like to feel about it.
yeah.
Okay,
And
number
and
two,
and and if you realize you have a lot of anger, because it could be like, oh my God, get it out, get your anger out, write
right.
it right. Yeah, get your anger
Yeah,
out. You need to feel it.
you need to feel it. You're writing it for yourself and without judging. Don't judge your feelings, just get it out there
Mhm.
on paper, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You
The
can
second
you
one was go to someone that you could trust because you're not alone. You need to share this with someone you could trust, correct?
yeah. And then I will find a therapist.
And then find a therapist. Someone who is again certified and trained in child sex abuse, not just any old therapist, correct?
Correct. You need to have know someone who has dealt with that, and knows how to talk to survivors. I've been talking to therapists that so I'm sorry, but they were lame. I was just like,
Yeah.
it's like that's the word. Like, you are so clumsy. How are you talking to me like this?
Wow. Wait, who would that's an example of what?
I remember one therapist. She
Oh, that a
wanted.
therapist said to you, "You're so
Yeah,
lame?"
therapy said, yeah, it was, she was like, oh, I'm so sorry you went through this. You should have never gone through something like that as a child. I'm so sorry, you poor thing. I
Oh,
was,
my goodness.
And I was like, I'm here for you to help me, not to feel sorry for me, right?
I
As
hope everyone's really listening to what Patricia just said. When she went for help, she had a therapist that you just explained it perfectly. And that does not make a victim slash survivor feel better. They want your help. They want real, comprehensive ways to get beyond it. They don't want your pity.
yeah, no, no, I don't want pity. I don't want that. It disempowers you.
It disempowers you. Wow. And I know that it's probably well intended, but it's also very much uninformed. So I would say for that reason alone, you need to search out a therapist that has been certified and trained and has good history working with child sex abuse.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's plenty because I mean,
Because
in
it's so
theory,
prevalent.
yes, in theory, 1 out of 5 people went through child sexual abuse. This means that 1 out of 5 adults that you know went through this as
One
children.
out of five adults. And let me ask you a question. If we can go now, shift over to mom or
Mhm.
mom and dad, uh, which I'm sure that you're acutely aware that there's many parents who also are sharing the shame, and they will tell themselves, oh, she or he doesn't need to go to therapy. We'll take care of it inside the home.
Mm-hmm. It does happen.
And that's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, my mom, she said to me, "You're so strong. You should be okay in 1 or 2 sessions."
Oh my goodness.
After 30 years of not being able to speak, or
Right.
um, they there's a fear that a therapist will change you or something. But
Mm-hmm.
it's true. That's the it is a bit backwards to think that we don't need therapy. Some people might not need it, and that's fine. They just come to peace and realization, and they are fine. But these are the minority. The majority would do need therapy. But even more people never go to therapy. They brush it under the carpet, and they pretend to be as happy as they can. And because processing that wound, it's really painful. And I know a lot of survivors that have consciously decided not to go to therapy.
Because processing it is too painful. And
Yeah.
really, the underlying reason behind that is because of fear. Just
A
fear
lot
of
of
of more pain, maybe. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
this fear of pain, this
Hmm.
fear of remembering more,
Yeah.
which I completely understand because I went to therapy for 2 of the abuses I remembered, and then I remember other abuses that for me were physically they were less, but
Hmm.
the emotional impact was way higher,
Mm.
way disturbing than the physical abuses that were more clear that they were sexual abuse, and it was really, really disturbing.
Yeah, it
So
affects you emotionally and mentally, for the long haul, much more, the physical stops, right? But then there's all of that icky residue that just lingers in your emotions and your mind.
yeah, it's and some people fear that they will not be able to continue with work, that it
Right.
will that it will change their relationship with their partner or with their family, because I mean in about 85% of the cases are 75 to 90% of the cases are people we know in our environment. It could be someone that you sit around the Christmas dinner every year.
Right, which is really important for people to be hearing as well, especially parents. It's 85% are the people that you know, the people that are closest to you and your family.
Yes, and this is the hardest thing to acknowledge. And if you don't, there's no way you can protect your child. If you don't, I know, that in my neighborhood there might be maybe 5 to 10 pedophiles.
Right.
And like, you have to accept this reality. And I might have in my family as well.
You know, yeah, it's so funny that you're saying this. I want to actually, I want to touch on that for a moment. When you said that there could be 5 to 10 pedophiles in your neighborhood or whatever number you put out there, it's interesting because there's a lot of people that, as you know, I'm sure in Mallorca and other countries that you have lived in are the same in the U.S. where when pedophiles come out of jail, it's public knowledge. You could find out if they're living in a specific area. It's public knowledge. And there are many people that, you know, that know that they find out and they're up in arms about, oh, how could they let a pedophile out and living in this area. But what I would argue is that those are the only ones that we know have actually been brought to
Hmm.
justice. And
Yes,
there's a million others that there's pedophiles right next door that you think are your best friend. There's pedophiles right, like you said, around the Christmas dinner table that are your family. And look, this is not to instill fear in people, but is to instill your awareness and education to wake up, smell the coffee, so to speak, and be crystal clear
yeah,
that the stats don't lie. It's 85% of predators on your children is someone that you know and is a loved one,
a loved one, someone you trust, because you will
someone
never,
you trust, right?
it
Like the
will,
neighbor, like the cousin, like the aunt, like the uncle, like the babysitter.
yes,
Goodness.
that's 100% correct. So if you don't take measures, the likelihood of your child being abused is really high.
Is really high. Let's go to your book for a moment. Can you, is there any excerpts that maybe that you'd like to highlight and share with us today?
Hmm.
Anything you could think of that maybe just organically comes to mind that you'd like to read, or maybe a couple of different sayings that we shouldn't, phrases that we shouldn't say in
Yeah.
reaction?
There are phrases, for instance, like, "Oh, this happened to all of us."
Oh my goodness.
That's one. That's a big one.
Yeah, like, so, okay, so put more guilt on the child.
Yeah, you will put more guilt on the child, or the adult who's speaking,
Wow.
or yeah, I believe that this happened to you. I believe you, but why don't you stay quiet? Don't make a big fuss about it, right?
Hmm.
Like they want to keep you silent, or these kind of things are really really disturbing, or they
Oh,
say
like in
things
other
like,
words, a parent saying, this is very disturbing.
uh some people say, like, "Oh, don't talk to me about this because it's disturbing,"
I
right?
see. Yeah.
Or they would say, I had one on the tip of my tongue when
That's okay. That's
it's not.
okay.
But like things like, no, I don't remember. I would it left my
That's
brain.
fine. In your book, do you have them all lined up? You said there's 42 phrases.
Mhm. There's 42 phrases in
Mm-hmm.
here,
Mm-hmm.
and I have, in the I was very angry, so I wrote this poem.
Get the say the title of that poem in your book. That's
The
great.
title of that poem is "Get the Fuck Out of My Life,"
Wow.
because this was a really dear friend at the time, and I told her. And by the way she reacted, she was rejecting me, punishing me for speaking, um, because she felt, I don't know how she felt, but she wanted to really shut me down. She did not support me at all. And this was a friend from my childhood.
Wow.
And
And so how did that make you feel? Like angry?
like this angry.
Like get the fuck out of my life. Is
Yeah,
that a poem?
it's
That's a
a
title
poem.
to a poem. Could
The
you
title
read
of
it
a
for
poem.
us? Could you read it for us?
Oh, yeah, yes, I can read it for you.
That
But
would be a great excerpt from your book.
yeah, and the thing is that when someone that you love and you trust and it's been your dear friend for years and years does not support you, is even more painful than the abuse, because you expect the abuser to abuse and to hurt you, right? But you don't expect someone you love to turn their back on you. And
Yeah.
even it felt like a stab on my chest, really, her words.
It's like taking the knife that was just put into your heart and
Yeah,
twisting it,
yeah,
literally.
yeah, literally, yeah, yes.
Wow.
So I can read it for you. I'm gonna take a sip of water.
Take a sip of water. So, Patricia, for those of you that are maybe just coming in on this, Patricia's reading an excerpt in her book. It's actually a poem that she wrote.
Now, get the fuck out of my life. To all people that hurt me intentionally, unintentionally, but repeatedly, despite the conversations, despite the million reconciliations, despite the love I once felt for you, get the fuck out of my life. Actually, if it's not clear enough, if despite my invitation you keep bugging me with your good intentions, get the fuck out of my life. Once we built castles on a tree. Once we flew on the back of a dragon in Mallorca. Once we loved each other unconditionally, I thought. Picking up phone calls at 4 a.m. And in the moment I need you the most, you support the ghost, the witch that has pushed me over the edge. Drop your crown, crying baby. Drop your crown, crying baby. Drop your feet on the ground. My sister, I called you. My sister, you called me. Get the fuck out of my life.
Wow. I have chills. I could feel it. I could feel it in my heart how that crushed you. Goodness. The ghost, the witch. Goodness gracious. Do you are you going to give that book to her?
No, no, I'm not
Hmm.
going to give the book to her. I think I've been in the newspapers now in Mallorca
Yes.
in an interview. I've been on the radio. So I don't know if she's seen it or not, but if she
Hmm.
wants, she can buy it.
Hmm. Yeah, I would charge her double.
No, to pay for the therapy sessions that I needed extra therapy to process
Oh
what she
my,
told me.
oh my goodness.
I needed to extend my therapy to process what she told me.
It's almost more hurtful than your mom
Yeah, it was
because
like,
she was outside of it. She was on
yeah,
the outside, and that's the one that you really thought was that trusted individual to go to.
yeah,
Wow. As simple as this sounds, we really don't know until push comes to shove who's really going to be there for us.
precisely.
Yeah.
We don't know. And thankfully, I don't have those feelings anymore, right? It's been a process. And
Correct.
and I can read it now, but in the past I will read it, and I will be when I read this poem many times in poetry events,
Yeah.
and I was getting emotional and almost crying each time. And now it's much more processed. So I just put it there because for people to realize how painful it is to hear the incorrect words.
Wow. I totally get it. And I think that was really smart of you to put that in there. And I do understand that something you read then and you were still processing and healing, now you could read it and really it's in a way that you can really use it as a tool. But for other people to understand how powerful your words are in a bad way, in a negative way
Mhm.
toward someone who has had this child sex abuse experience. But I'd like to also say, Patricia, it's really okay that you had that anger, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so other victims today should know that it's okay. It's where you were at that time. Again, it goes back to that question. If you're just coming to terms with it and resonating with this conversation today, how did it make you feel then? How do you feel now? How would you like to feel? Right. And so maybe you did feel angry, scared, fear, whatever that is. But this is a whole nother layer. How did you feel when you told this person?
Yeah.
How do you feel now about it? How would you like to feel about it? How would you like to heal and get through it and get beyond this current situation?
And I at the time I only wanted to feel this rage. It made me feel good. It made me feel right to be mad to all these people who didn't support me. But in the long run, in the long term, it doesn't help.
It
But
doesn't help.
it doesn't help. But in that moment, it made me feel that I was doing the right thing. But
Hmm.
as you know, you cannot live in that state. Well,
Right.
you can, but you will be pretty miserable.
You can't live in that state and feel peace in your life whatsoever, and even move forward spiritually. I mean, we have to grow, and many of us die from leave this earth without actually having that growth even happen. But we
Mm.
really do have the opportunity, especially with people like yourself, that are educating the world and wants to be really a voice for everyone. So I really
Mm.
commend you for that. I do.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
and Lily, I was talking with the newspaper in Mallorca, and I said, "There's something that you want to say?" Like, yes, I want us to be sponsored by Red Bull, right? Because
Ah,
you know this how brave it is to jump from a cliff, right? It's really brave, and people applaud and admire those people, and is not surrounded by pity or sadness or grief. You're celebrating how brave these people are. But when we speak I mean, it's inevitable that some people feel pity or anger or rage, but I think our bravery should be celebrated as well. Okay.
yes,
And it would be beautiful to have a setting, and this is what I envision, where support can be given to survivors and excel at, speaking up and being celebrated, and not because we've been like shut down so much with the stigma and shame and guilt. Like enough is enough. And the song "This Is Me" from The Greatest Showman. Have you seen the film?
I don't believe I've seen the
Okay.
film.
Yeah, but "This Is Me" is like a song you should, maybe you can put it somewhere.
I think that, yeah, I will do that.
Yeah, it's like the woman with the beard in the circus, like say, "Oh, we are tired of not being seen and appreciated and heard. Like, this
Hmm.
is me. Like, look out, here I come."
Mm.
And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I need no apology. This is me.
Oh,
Right.
how
So
beautiful.
yeah, that's the song.
That's gonna be the theme song to, this episode.
Yes.
Patricia, it's when we look at the the effects that it has on, uh, the long-term effects that it can
Mhm.
have on a victim or survivor, that hasn't addressed it, hasn't spoken out. Uh, let's say it is a preteen and it's not addressed. There's also other ways aside from of obviously that internal anger. There's also other ways that a lot of sexual child sex abuse victims act out, and that is actually eh, going into alcohol and drugs and gangs and um, uh, uh, how about lashing out in school, becoming the school bully, becoming a school predator, a school victim, like being just taken down by everyone. How about even potential suicide? Am I right?
Yes, yes. It can go down spiral, um, and suicide does happen. Sometimes early in the process, sometimes years and years later, because it's been this heaviness, this emptiness, this feeling of not being worthy no matter what, no
Yeah.
matter what you do, no matter what you achieved.
Mm-hmm.
Many survivors um, go down the route of excelling at things. I know
Mm-hmm.
some of them who speak 5 languages have to master degrees, coordinate really big teams and still feel they can sing, they can act, they can do like everything, and they still feel unworthy.
Yeah. And
That's a
also the reverse where and that's interesting because they'll show such success in other areas of their life
yes,
and still be living with that, like, deep seated within them and never getting beyond that. And then there's also I actually, do know someone who, had, experienced, child sex abuse with a family member, a very close family member, and I'm not going to
mm,
elaborate. And as an adult, he claims that he uh, he just could never feel confident. He could never hold a job. He's a great father, great husband. But like the first marriage and children, like that fell apart. Like it just continuously into his older adult years just keeps showing up.
yes, it is a cycle. It's that it could go like, yes, you cannot hold a job, you cannot have healthy relationships at work or personal relationships. You might gamble or drink or smoke or
Mhm,
do other kind of drugs, self-harm, uh, eat, compulsively,
mhm.
have I didn't tell you this. This was really shocking. I knew that one of the effects was people will be like eating, have a disorder with their eating habits. But I talked to two therapists recently, and they work in the nutrition area, and like about 90% of the women that go to treat themselves because of overweight, they were abused as children.
Oh, yeah, I've heard
And,
that before too. Yes.
and they need to keep eating because they want to hide themselves. And as
Mm.
soon as they start losing weight, they come closer to the weight they had when they were abused and they can bear it. That's
Oh,
a trigger. for the
Wow.
trauma,
Wow.
and they gain the weight again.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So and I know, and I have seen other studies and talked to other people, and when you see someone overweight or even obese,
Mhm.
the chances that these people were abused when they were children are really, really high.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And there's
I'm like stopped in my tracks with this. We never discussed this the last time either. Or this is obviously it's an organic conversation, but hmm, I'm
Mhm.
speechless.
Yeah.
How
And it
can
has.
it, how can well, I guess my first question is mm, you learning this from other therapists or psychologists or counselors, are they able to have success in helping these people with the eating disorders now?
They, but they need to treat the trauma.
They need to treat the trauma. They need to go back to the root, which, oh
Otherwise,
my goodness, I talk about that in my book, Truth to Triumph, all the time. Doesn't matter what the situation is. We need to go back to the root and pull it out.
yeah. Otherwise, they will never lose weight, or they can lose weight, but they will gain it again.
Mm.
So,
Or they will lose weight, and like you said, they're going to be traumatized again. So it has to be addressed before so that they can start to really see themselves and love themselves for who they were then, who they are now, and who they want to be.
yeah, it's and sometimes, and I had some of them telling me I can be fairly happy without looking back, without treating the trauma. I can be fairly happy like this, and I choose to be like this.
Right.
And they might be rejecting money in the sense that they will not they will not be charging much for their services, or they will keep a low income jobs.
Mm.
That's even if they have studied and everything, they will keep low income and say, no, I don't need money, because they don't want to. There's certain humbleness, uh, but also maybe there's, I don't know, some, I'm hear me, maybe I speak for myself, that you're afraid to shine and to be seen.
Oh, that makes total sense. I This makes total sense. It really makes me wonder, Patricia, people listening to this right now, like how would they, and let's say they do have now a young adult child, let's say, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, 25, 30, that he or she is, obese. And no matter what they've tried to do as a parent, they're just not losing, they don't know what to do. Isn't it entirely possible that they really can consider that as being one of the possible reasons why they became an overeater and a heavy person because maybe someone in their family did sexually abuse them or a family member or a friend?
Yeah, I would consider it, like, for sure.
Because you said 90%. Those are, excuse,
90% of those therapies that I
oh, of
talk.
those therapists that you talked to.
Yeah.
Those are very high statistics from professionals that work with people that have trouble with bad eating patterns, overeating, and I imagine also anorexia,
Yes. Anorexia, bulimia.
bulimia. So any kind of
um,
eating disorders, uh, there really could be the
Yeah.
underlying core could be child sex abuse from the
Yeah.
past.
And
How would
and
they address that?
the ones I know,
I mean, the
I
parents, if someone's listening now and they're thinking, oh my goodness, or they might be even getting angry at this episode. Oh, that's ridiculous. But
mm,
if you really love your child, even if your child's an adult at this point, wouldn't that be your responsibility to look into it? And if that's the case, how would you even do that? And then also, some people even could be deceased. It could be a predator is deceased at that point, right?
yeah. Yes, it could be that disease, but it doesn't. But the trauma, I mean, one of the people who abused me, she passed away. And in the moment she did, I was happy because then I didn't have to see her again. But the trauma was still there.
Right. That unfortunately the predator may die, but the trauma that you have to live with as the victim never dies until it's
Yeah,
addressed,
until you process it. And
until you process it.
yeah, and how the thing is that some of these obese people, or overweight or with bulimia, they might not even remember the
Yeah,
abuse because maybe it happened on an early stage.
right.
And there's different ways to go there. I haven't used this one, but hypnotherapy usually can can give you some clarity, but you really need to find the right, again, therapist, because when you are in this hypnosis state, they could influence your memories and install in your brain a memory that is not real.
Ah, so you really need a legit
Yeah,
hypnotherapist. And I'm going to even go a little further than that. That actually has dealt with child sex abuse and is even perhaps certified in child sex abuse education.
yeah. But you need to be really careful because if they put a memory there that is not yours, it can be really damaging, right?
Ah, yeah, it's such a slippery slope.
It is, but there's something in there that has to be fixed.
Yeah.
And sadly, with one of them who I spoke, because she was working with children that were 7, 8 years old, and all
Mhm.
of them were overweight or obese. And she said, some parents don't give any um, importance to what happened because it was a light abuse. It was only,
Light. Oh, so
yeah,
now
they call it light. I don't know, like it was not a rape. It was only touching or
that's
only a kiss
disgusting.
or
What?
only once, and the kid is suffering from that. They decide not to take the child to therapy, but they take it to a nutritionist, and the nutritionist cannot do anything because the root is the abuse.
Right. I can't even wrap my mind around that statement that it was a light abuse.
Yeah, it was a children's game, or it was a joke, or it
Mm.
was because and these kind of things, I think we discussed this in the previous one, that there are some, I don't know, family jokes or habits, like a mom touching their daughter's breast as a joke, like,
Hmm.
oh, look at your boobies are growing, or the lemons, or whatever they call them,
Hmm.
or a grandfather grabbing the testicles of a child saying, oh, you're growing up so much, like the macho thing,
Mm.
right? Or just, let me change your so let me help you changing clothes, and then the moment they change the clothes, they touch them, but it doesn't go.
Inappropriately. Yeah.
Yeah, again,
Inappropriately when they're touching them.
inappropriately, they touch them inappropriately. You don't need to touch the intimate parts to change someone's pants or skirt or anything, and they touch them in that moment, and the child, mm, you know, is exposed to that, and maybe
Mhm.
it happens in front of other people, and maybe they make fun of it because they find it funny, maybe they pinch their butt, and they make it look like it's nothing too important.
Right. Right. And you see this all the time. That's why it I go back to that story, that memory with my father saying, not wanting his friend over anymore and just dismissing that relationship as if it never existed, just from the mere sentence that he said. And
Yeah,
again, I go back to better to be overprotective than not. Like, this is not appropriate. This is not appropriate language in my home. This is not appropriate, touching. Like, we don't do this, in my home, or this is not allowed. And we talked about earlier in the beginning, middle of the episode, about also how to have those rules with babysitters or caregivers or whatever that might be. And it's here's even going a step further, Patricia. There's also the extremely disgusting reality of elder abuse
mm,
from caregivers. That's, again, is a whole nother topic. But so it just you can even look at nurses and doctors, and like we said this earlier, people in the medical profession that we're conditioned to trust. We've got to trust. Like, if you can't trust your medical professionals,
yeah.
that's not a good thing.
No, it's not a good thing, and I think for me it's so important to have the open conversation
From mom.
without any kind of
Um,
taboo.
yes. Again, back to putting a bow around all that. That is the whole reason and mission and purpose Patricia Cardona as a steward of children. We need to start having these open discussions. Parents need to avail themselves to all of the education and training that Patricia offers, and you need to get this book. Can you hold that up again and say, the it's in Spanish right now. It is
Yeah,
going to be translated into English and will be available. Right now it's available in Spanish at Amazon, on Amazon. Can you hold that up and tell us the title of the book again?
yeah. In Spanish, es frases que nunca deberías decir ante un abuso sexual. And in English, it would be phrases that you should never say in front of a sexual abuse.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Any last words of insight for today that you'd like to end with for our listeners?
Yeah, I would really like to tell anyone, especially parents, to think what what is the next thing I can do to protect my child from abuse, and do it now, do it today.
Perfect.
Having listened to the podcast, this one and the previous one, what is the one thing I can do, and do it today, and get in the habit of doing it day by day, in the same way that you're not ashamed of teaching your child to cross the street. Don't be ashamed to teach your child to protect himself, herself, themselves, and talk about it with your family, your friends, your neighbors. Take it step by step, but do it. Don't waste a second.
So perfectly put. Thank you so much for being here. We are going to put links to the book in Spanish, and then I will come forward with the future links when it's translated into English, and actually add that onto this episode notes as well. And of course, Patricia Cardona's full bio is in the notes as well. So thank you so much for being here, Patricia. You have been, once again, this powerhouse of a woman and a human, and I really appreciate you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me here, Lily. It's a pleasure.